Hello, my oppressed people over there on the other side of the YouTube screen. Today I want to be talking to you one of the hardest and the most difficult subjects in the whole human world and in the whole planet Earth also. And I'm here in front of a new background. I hope you like this because I'm going to be telling you in this video about one of the deepest subjects you will ever hear here on YouTube. So hear me. Let's talk about enforcement related to oppression. What is enforcement? I'm going to ask you a question. This is related to your personal freedom, but it's also related to the freedom of your nation, and it's also related to the freedom of your family. It's related to every kind of freedom you have. Brace yourself. What kind of things did your parents enforce on you? What kind of things did your school system enforce on you? And what kind of things did your friends enforce on you? Or maybe your religion? What were the things that you must never do this? And what were the things that you must never be like this? And what were the things that you must be this? What were those things? Could you fool them? Were you able to fulfill them? If not, what happened? You are here, so you probably didn't die. But what happened? I'm going to talk to you about enforcing and enforcement because it's a very limiting thing and a very bad thing for your own happiness, actually. When other people are enforcing you to be some way, for example, you must never, never, never be the person that screams. You must not ever scream. It might be understandable if, for example, you lived in like an apartment with your parents, like in those buildings, that have many floors in them, or that you had a younger, like sibling, who was sleeping. Your parents might have always said to you that be silent, don't wake up the baby. You have to kind of think about that. If we have like three, siblings, one of them is old, one of them is younger, and one of them is the youngest, who of these is going to be the most screaming prone? The youngest, of course. I'm the youngest in the family. And I scream the most, that's for sure. Yeah, I scream the loudest. That's just my style. So think about this question, how it's related to your culture also. Like, what are your cultural enforcements? You must never, 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 break the law, for example. You must never break the law. That's the worst thing a human being can do. Well, what is the law? Well, you have to understand that the law is relative. For example, you must never break the law of using drugs. You must never break the law of stealing, for example. What if your parent broke the law, What if your parent was a drug addict, How will you relate to the law of taking drugs? Probably you will look at it and be like, well, I can break that law. My parents broke the law, So why not? And what if you are in your situation maybe enforced to, for example, work? Like that, like being unemployed is like not acceptable, Like being unemployed, like that's worse than death, For example, in your family, like they enforce you should and you ought to be employed, like there's no other way to live. Then you have to understand that there's some kind of deep set, limiting actually of your own freedom. The other person is limiting your freedom, but when we are talking about parenting, those limitations become like ingrained in you, You must never do this. They are being enforced on a societal level, but they are also being reinforced in the individual psyche. You must never be insane. You must never show weakness, you know. You must never cry. That kind of stuff. Why? Well, it might be that your parents might have punished you if you cried or ignored you. That's also possible. Or not like recognized that you're crying, for example. They might have done that. It's possible, you know. So when you are looking at your own neurotic behavior and your depression and that kind of stuff in your life, you are bound to start to understand it more deeply. We're going to enforce on you that you must never be angry, you know. Never be angry, you know. That's not acceptable, you know. There were these punishments, you know. So if you were angry, you kind of pushed that under the surface into your subconscious mind, you know. Certain kind of violent behavior that are related to anger are illegal. And it's understandable that they are illegal. They are not very nice. But where does this really come? Where does this really, you know, go into is that human beings have these boundaries, you know, that you must not break these boundaries of other people. We must enforce these boundaries with these laws. And that can be fine, you know, and that's probably okay. But what we are really not addressing over here is the individual that has this, you know, problem. For example, you might break other people's boundaries, like physical boundaries, through physical violence like this. You were enforced not to cry when you were a child. I don't know why. I can't explain. Maybe your father or mother was an alcoholic or drug taker and he was very, you know, got very angry when you cried. And through that you have repressed all that, you know, sadness. You have repressed it. And in a situation that kind of reminds you of that, you just blow up and you might hurt somebody. But if your parents reinforced on top of this rule that you must not touch anybody, you know, don't hit your brother, you know, they enforce this like through maybe a hard punishment or something like that, then it might make you more prone or less prone to do that kind of behavior. You never know. You never know. So understand that that humankind is a one gigantic dysfunctional family. And this is the reason why. It's that we have our own ideas and standards, and these only come about when we grow up, you know. Infants don't have these standards. These are passed over, you know, like through millennia. For example, when you look at my clothes over here, like these have a huge tradition and a huge like set of like what these represent, you know. Like what does the fedora really represent, you know? Well, I think it represents freedom, you know. It represents good questions. It represents like listening. It represents, you know, boundaries. It represents everything that, you know, makes you a good being. But it also represents crime, mafia, you know, breaking the law. It's a symbol. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so great. But if you think about in your, for example, upbringing, you know, for example, like screaming might have represented like stupidity, even though it might not be stupid to scream in some situations. It might be actually very stupid to not scream if you are, for example, like shipwrecked. I'm not shipwrecked, but if you fall off a fucking, you know, anything and you need help, if you don't scream and you can't be seen, you know, that's pretty bad. You have to, you can save yourself in some situation if you are really good at screaming. So learn it. You have to understand that your parents are not omnipotent, and your culture is not omnipotent, and not any law is perfect. There are always bound to be situations where for example, doing the thing that is deemed like not like okay is actually okay, like is actually very good decision to do in that situation. But then again, you might like think about, for example, criticism. Never criticize anybody. You know, why did you like? For example, this is my style. You know, I don't like to criticize because I don't like to be criticized. You know, I think it's not a thing it's not a thing that a human being should do to other people. You know, criticize, because I don't think that it works at all. You know. And I also think that it's very hard on your own psyche and health, you know, to always criticize. So you shouldn't criticize. How did I learn this? Were I always like this? Well, no, but at the same time, I kind of changed my own behavior. Maybe it was the other people who enforced this on me, that don't criticize me. Maybe my own, you know, sensitivity to criticism actually didn't come from me myself at all. You know, maybe it was somebody else completely. Who knows? Who knows? So think about these questions. These are deep questions. I want you really to probe into this. This will help you so much in your life. Thanks for watching.